I was 22 years old when this happened to me last summer. I wasn't a particularly gregarious child back then. When I would go out, it was usually because my pathetic companions had coerced me into leaving the house. That was the situation at hand. It was, after all, meant to be. I was asked to a house party at approximately 8 p.m. by my friend Philip. I grudgingly decided to go with him even though it was somewhat spontaneous and I had nothing else going on. I was aware that if I said no, he would treat me badly. But even I can't lie. Even with strangers, the thought of having a party sounded better than spending time by yourself. Since Philip lived a few towns away from me, traveling apart by car made more sense than traveling together. After giving me the EDI, I left. I pulled out into the roadway in that very instant. Philip abruptly called it quits. Granted, I was irritated. How could he abandon me in such a way? Feeling like a complete idiot, I chose to go inside the stranger's house despite being furious and determined not to squander the night. I had driven all the way here, I reasoned. Better head inside. I approached the front door and rapped on it. Randy, the host, gave me a cordial welcome. He was charming, affable, and likable right away, all without being a. Things were less awkward than I had expected when he showed me around. Despite their ignorance of my identity, people were incredibly kind to me. I even had my eye on a couple of the gals. I resolved to enjoy the celebration and indulge in alcohol. The party was still going strong even though it was getting rather late. I will admit that I may have overindulged in my drinking. I had to take a break at 1 a.m. because I was feeling so queasy and lightheaded. It must have been almost 2 a.m. when I went upstairs to hunt for a bathroom, but they were all taken. The house was quite spacious. I was getting lost in the labyrinth of hallways. Granted, it was probably the drink. That's where I discovered a door leading to what appeared to be an attic or storage area after reaching the top floor. In need of solitude badly, I reasoned that this was as good a spot as any to gather myself. I felt around aimlessly for the light switch, but it was missing. There was dust throughout the place, which indicated that this was an attic or similar space. I opened the window in the furthest corner to let the refreshing night breeze in. There was a full minute there that I was thinking of throwing up on the roof. I just hung my head out the window though, since the breeze helped to ward off my sickness. The stillness outside was a welcome change from the noisy pandemonium downstairs when it became dark. A light breeze and some peaceful time can sometimes be all you need to improve your mood. There was a slight sound when I turned to close the window and go back. Steps on the shingle roof. That was nonsensical, though. Was I losing my mind? I climbed out onto the roof out of curiosity. To be honest, if I had been sober, there was probably zero chance that I would have done it. I got up slowly and surveyed my surroundings in the moonlight. Something horrifying caught my eye. 2 masked people were coming from one another, carrying suitcases. Dough. And it hit me, Randy's house was being broken into. I went into a panic. Shall I yell at them, face them? Then, I have a more urgent inquiry. In my fumbling incredulity, I slid and scuffed one of the shingles fairly loudly. What if they were armed? When he heard it, one of the robbers jerked his head in my direction. We locked eyes for a moment, and I froze. He gave his companion a little shove, and the two of them soon began moving across the roof. My heart pounded with adrenaline. I was unable to let them escape. I felt an overwhelming sense of loyalty since Randy had been so kind. I decided to take action. I cautiously followed the robbers across the roof in silence. In search of a simpler way out, they made their way to a slope on the roof. I took out my phone to call 911 as they descended, but I dropped it due to my inebriation. The robbers turned when the phone clattered loudly. Who is present? One of them pounded hard and snarled. I ducked, looking about me and noticing a loose roof shingle. I grabbed it and threw it at them without thinking. Though it missed, the noise shocked them and knocked one off balance. Crashing against the gutter and then hitting the ground, he toppled from the roof. Fearing for his life, the second thief jumped onto a nearby tree, scrambled down, and ran to the edge of the roof in time to see the fallen burglar moving quickly on the ground. As I turned to head back, I heard sirens and felt compelled to notify everyone. It seems that someone else made the police call. Trying to look cool, I staggered back into the attic room and headed downstairs. The party had not seen the drum outside and was still in full flow. I discovered Randy joking and conversing with the visitors. "You should contact the police, Randy. There has been a theft." I answered. I spotted the burglars on the roof. Randy's expression changed from horror to amusement. "Are you telling the truth?" he remarked, hurrying to get on the phone. I described the events. The excitement turned to worry at the party. It turns out that one of Randy's neighbors had already reported a noise complaint to the police, which was a highly ironic stroke of luck. When they got there, I told them my story and guided them to the burglar who was hurt. His partner had left, but the man was taken into custody. Abruptly, the celebration came to an end, people began to disperse, and the lights came on. Even after everything that had transpired, I was still faltering a little bit, despite my best efforts to act sober. Randy expressed his gratitude to me, still astonished. In my case, I was just relieved that I could be of assistance, even under the strange and horrifying circumstances. Though, in retrospect, I'm not sure why the burglars would have chosen to break into a house that was hosting a party. Perhaps they were aware of the property beforehand and knew no one would be upstairs. That seemed to be the end of the story, but a few months later, I have a lot to share. One evening, while I was at Philip's house playing video games, he received a call from Randy inviting us over for a few beers. I had no idea the two of them were that close until that moment. The front door was the first thing I saw when I arrived at Randy's house. Additionally, every view and window was unique. Was I not recalling his residence correctly? The glass in the front entrance was considerably more substantial looking and gray than I could have imagined. We descended to Randy's basement when he waved us in. After having a few beers, we got into a game of pool. He genuinely acknowledged me from the party, which surprised me, and he thanked me once again for my trouble. In reality, what he told us was, strangely enough, though, the burglar the police apprehended that evening reportedly refused to turn informant on his buddy and was incarcerated for a long time. However, the police had not been able to obtain any leads that would lead to the other guy's capture. Randy informed us that his family received threatening letters from an unknown sender within a week after the occurrence, some of which included images of him and his family. They had, of course, reported these incidents to the police. Not a single genuine lead. 1 month later, at about 1 a.m, Randy's mother saw a strange car circle the property. After a few days, Randy's father reported that items in their backyard had been rummaged through and rearranged. As a result, Randy's father increased their level of house security and even replaced and strengthened all of their doors. I was surprised to learn that Randy was still having problems with this, and I had no idea how bad things might go. Summer is coming up quickly, and when I meet Randy again, I'm sure I'll have more news. This has been a problem for almost a month, but first, allow me to explain. At the age of 24, I reside with my parents. Almost all of the money I make is used to support my family, who are not and have never been wealthy. I don't have the best relationship with my parents. When I'm not working or going out with pals, we fight a lot. I usually keep to myself. I don't want to compose a narrative about bad luck or anything like that, but I've experienced difficulties. Expanding. My go-to retreat has always been up fitness. It seems like a good method for me to decompress from personal issues. There is a park about 10 minutes away from my house that includes a fitness center with bars for pull-ups, dips, and other calisthenic exercises. It also makes a great excuse to get out of the house. I would like to work out there in the summertime since I find that being in nature helps me de-stress. Since it's a public park, I like to visit at night since it becomes crowded during the day. I therefore decided to sneak out of the house to work out one evening when my parents were fighting. It must have been 85 degrees that scorching summer night. I recall walking from my doorway to the beat-up white Corolla and inhaling the humid air. I sat in our driveway with the lovely summer breeze running through my hair, cranking the rusty engine and rolling down the windows. When I got to the park, I got out of my vehicle. In the lot, my automobile was the only one. At this point, the park was deserted and it was perhaps 10 o'clock or 11 p.m. Another reason I adore this park is the way the lovely surroundings and moist air combine to create a calming ambience. It is perched on a hill with a view of my city's downtown, which always brightens my evenings with sentimental and nice vibes. I began a set on the pull-up bar, nonetheless. To be honest, I wasn't keeping track of the reps. When I work out, I just keep going till I fail, then I take a break and try again a few times. When I stopped in between sets to stretch out my arms before returning to the bar, though, an unfathomable sensation overcame me like a strong subconscious need, causing me to turn around. A tall, disheveled man was standing just a foot away from my face. I gave a real scream and leaped backward about 5 feet. With a loud, caustic chuckle, he apologized, stating he didn't want to frighten me. He had a very odd appearance and way of acting. As soon as possible, it was as though we were face to face. There was something wrong with him. He said, "I asked you why he was so close to me. He's alive." Here, he clarified that he had inquired since he frequently saw me working out here. If only I could instruct him. Now that I'm a fairly non-confrontational person, I just wanted to be gone, especially at that particular moment. By yourself. I informed him, clumsily but nicely, that I was only going to perform some pull-ups. And go away. I got back up on the bar and carried on with my set. His words lingered in my thoughts. He constantly notices me being here. I felt his eyes staring at me. The back of my neck is burning. However, as I've already stated, I'm not combative. He did, however, annoy me more and more, and I was at a loss for words or action. But then, just as I was about to wrap up my set, I heard him murmur my entire set, which was pretty strange. As I leaped from the bar and gradually retreated, my blood suddenly became cold. What did I say, shakily? He just stared at me with this crazy, wide-eyed smile without saying anything. I wondered whether I was hearing things. That was the strangeness of it. I began to experience a terrible feeling in my stomach, as though something negative was going to occur. I made the hasty decision to head back to my car and get out without saying anything further. As I backed away from the park, I could feel that man staring at me. Luckily, he didn't follow me. But before I left, I took one more glance and noticed him hanging from the bar, trying to pull a pull-up. I watched as he reached for the bar, made an unsuccessful attempt to pull himself up, and then attempted again in the same spot where I had been. I hurried out of the park and didn't turn around during the whole trip back. I asked myself several questions. Was my name truly said by him? Had I lost my mind? I made an effort to ignore it, and gradually I succeeded. The following day, I got up early to go to work. I have to get up early because I work in construction. Before my parents. I therefore noticed the unmarked mail at my front door before anyone else did. I was the one who received it. I assumed I would read whatever was inside when I got a chance and took it up. Another scorching summer day forced me to take an early lunch break to cool off. I opened the slope as I was eating my pre-made sandwich while sitting in my car. I had no idea what to anticipate, but I certainly never would have imagined that I would find 10 printed pictures of Maine. They, all unintentionally taken. One showed me driving my automobile. One showed me at work, while the other showed me working out at a park. Before it became unbearably sick, I remembered that we were due for the night right away. I flipped through the remainder of them, staring in shock. The worst of all was a picture of my house that was taken from outside my window, showing me asleep. Tears streamed down my face and I almost choked on my food. I felt uneasy. I immediately quit work after informing my employer that a severe problem had arisen. I didn't care that he wasn't pleased with me. I drove straight to the police station after snapping a snapshot of the pictures. I described my incident at the park to the police and handed them the images. They promised to check in when I gave them the man's description. Execute it. I also told my parents about it, and for the first time in a very long time, I received some genuine sympathy. But then other things began to happen. I heard knocks on the door a few nights later at around 3 in the morning. Thinking worst of it, I didn't open it. I once discovered a sticky note with a sharply drawn heart stuck to my car window. When I went back to the police to report this, they promised to start an inquiry into stalkers. They haven't responded to me yet. I reasoned that without hard proof, it's difficult to construct a case. Since this occurred almost a month ago, I've been extremely vigilant. It's already difficult for my parents to find a new place to live considering our financial circumstances. I'll keep you updated if anything more occurs, but for now, I'll be sleeping with one eye open. Without a doubt, the best season is summer. It's a hill there. Any day now, I'll die. As you may assume, nature is the main reason I adore summertime instead of drinking or going out to parties. I firmly believe that warmer weather and being outside go hand in hand, and I promise to spend a greater amount of time outside during hot spells. A few summers back, it was a warm June night. I was perhaps 17 or 18 when this happened. For background, there is a sizable natural area close to my home. Massive, I say. I do. Even now, its total area is around 1,000 acres. I'm sure there are still aspects of it that I haven't fully investigated. Though it was technically unlawful and completely forbidden to camp there, 2 of my friends and I decided to spend the night there since we felt there was no way anyone could find us in this dense jungle. All we have to do is hike as far as we can. Chuck was the group's die-hard camper. This child, I'm telling you, adored dressing up as a Boy Scout. Most likely know almost 100 different knots. Jackson, our other friend, always provided the booze. If sober, he was not happy. That was just the way it worked with Jackson around here. I recall the 3 of us packing up Jackson's car with the soft summer breeze blowing through my hair. The weather was perfect. Not very hot or freezing. The 3 of us had a couple of beers later. We discovered ourselves hauling camping gear across the forest at approximately 11:30. As we marched along, I have to admit that I started to feel the effects of drinking. Chuck never left home without this heavy-duty flashlight, so it wasn't too bad that the forest was dark. Even with Chuck's illumination handy, walking through dense woods at this hour was a little unsettling, despite my fondness for being outside. Upon over 30 minutes of non-stop walking, the trio arrived at a compact, level space that was perfect for making camp. We set up our chairs and pitched our tent according to the truck's instructions. The next phase was the fire. Chuck took the initiative once more, and after a few more minutes, we had a respectable fire going. Jackson flung me another drink, reaching into his bag. Then he reached for his JBL speaker and turned on some tunes. We must have spent a good 2 hours drinking and talking since the atmosphere was so great. By then, I could see the other guys were about ready to call it a night. We were all very inebriated. Jackson lowered the volume and began gathering empty beer cans. A loud whistle suddenly broke the stillness. In a matter of seconds, I went from a drunken haze to high alert, almost jumping out of my seat. There are no words to explain it. The whistle sounded very high. It continued to sound. With a swift motion, Justin Jackson turned off the speaker, and the 3 of us sat silently, exchanging worried glances. My heart was thumping loudly inside my chest. For what felt like an eternity, we sat there, motionless, listening closely to our surroundings, but nothing was there. Almost everything appeared calmer than when we arrived. As if you're extremely silent. Not even the typical with sounds you are accustomed to. During that moment, I replayed in my mind the memories of the whistle. It was undoubtedly not an animal's noise. It sounds like a typical stadium whistle, if that makes any sense. Chuck finally shattered the quiet, nudging us to get in the car and head off. Jackson and I weren't on board with that strategy, even if it could put us in danger of running into whoever was making the noise, which I was dreadful about. By now it was beyond 3 in the morning, and anything this late would only cause problems. It was a terrifying concept to consider that whoever had created the noise was most likely aware of our presence. I had no idea what to do. While packing up and leaving at this hour didn't seem like a much better alternative either, staying put went against every survival instinct I had. At last, we decided to wait it out. Removed. Chuck warned me not to do as I was going to do, suggesting that any hazardous creatures would be repelled by the fire. That's when the actual seriousness of the issue hit me squarely. We were miles away from any kind of civilization. There was an unidentified object somewhere in the shadows about 3 in the morning. After 10 or so more minutes, we were conversing again, but at a much lower volume and without any music. None of us felt comfortable going to sleep quite yet, I believe. However, and then, right out of my peripheral vision, I observed it. Something little landed squarely in the flames after flying over Jackson's shoulder's blackness. It was a detonator. Chuck swore as he shot out of his chair and ran into the darkness, and I screamed bloody murder as it began to sparkle in the flames. Jackson and I hurriedly followed, hauling our belongings behind us. Chuck was running rapidly through the woods with his flashlight shining fiercely, and he caught up to him. After running until we were exhausted, Jackson passed out and puked. The 3 of us waited there, panting, attempting to determine if we were being followed when he turned off the light. I was surprised to find that nobody appeared to be following us. But I don't think I've ever felt such fear. What on earth would have motivated someone to do that? We had to decide what action to take. Jackson's wish was to just find a way out of the woods and never return. Chuck, though, did not want to give up all of his camping equipment in the back. He also informed us that the fire was still going strong. I was in disbelief. After what had transpired, how could he be worried about forest fires? Chuck and I eventually decided that we ought to at least check the website. Then again, nobody had been after us, so maybe the person who'd thrown that firecracker was merely pulling a terrible practical joke. Being a skilled navigator, Chuck was even able to follow our exact path and discern the fire's glow while we moved silently. Walked up to them. But before I could go any closer, Jackson pointed with a frightened expression on his face and put a hand in front of mine. Face. I tried to see what was visible in the separation. I think the most scary thing I have ever seen is what I saw. 3 people were seated like statues in our chairs, not moving. The person whose face was visible to me appeared dead, and his mouth was hanging open. I was terrified to move. Even so, what were they doing? Even though they weren't conversing, I realized this was not how things usually were. After observing for a short while longer, the 3 of us decided to back off. As we turned to go, Jackson cursed in disgust after his foot caught a rock. The fire suddenly lost its light in a matter of seconds, appearing as though it had been shrouded in a cloak. It moved so quickly. We didn't linger for another moment. Once more, we ran from the scene, but we could hear footsteps crashing in our wake this time. On this occasion, we continued. We dashed from the forest and sprinted to Jackson's vehicle. We were miraculously not pursued after leaving the woods. On the way back, none of us said anything. Chuck stated that the next day, we were all engrossed in our thoughts. We went back to the location during the day to gather his possessions. Jackson was not interested in that, but I consented to go with Chuck. We looked around for a while before finding the website, which appeared to be largely unaltered. That is until we approached Chuck's tent and detected the foul scent emanating from it. We discovered a dead, running rat when he unzipped it. It was repulsive. Since I followed the advice, I haven't returned to that preserved